Hello and welcome to the C47
Welcome,
podcast.
Tom.
We're here for the final part of our podcast, part 3.
About to hit the pinnacle.
And today we're going over the third and final part of Beak of the Finch.
It starts off with chapter 15, Invisible Characters. In this chapter, they talk about DNA and finches. So what happens is they look at mutations between the finches by their blood. They break it down and look at the different letters in their blood.
And they see the mutations because the normal G-cat or G-cow is, missense mutation.
Yes.
Also at this point, all of our main characters, the Grants and Boag, they're all kind of semi-retired. They only work at the labs at this point. They don't actually venture out onto the island anymore.
Yeah, so Boag is the main one doing the experiments with DNA to look at different mutations in the finches. Another thing they're talking about in the chapter is bacteria under stress. It shows that bacteria put under stress mutate rapidly to adapt to the change.
Because if they're put under so much stress, they're pretty much forced to adapt, or they will, be wiped out.
Because they're trying to stay in their niche and adapt to the adaptations or the problems. And the last thing in the chapter is the hybrids. After the flood, the hybrids are a lot more common because the niche is changing.
The hybridization is happening.
Yeah.
So moving on to chapter 16, we talk about invasive species, mostly.
An invasive species can be very bad for an ecosystem because the ecosystem is a relatively fragile thing. Everything's in balance, and even though it moves up and down, it's still in balance. Everything evolves together and stays together. But once you introduce a new species, it can take a niche from a species that's already there, and that species either has to fight back or gets driven out. And if
like the lionfish.
Yeah, if the new species acts differently than the old species that they drove out, the entire chain is going to be thrown off because they might eat different things or more of one thing, which just has a chain reaction, making the ecosystem strange.
It's like a balance scale. It's all balanced. Everyone's got their role on each side,
And then it's like
you
putting a gorilla on the balance scale.
like some form of monkey or something.
Yeah, like a monkey.
Yeah, like a monkey and a banana, like on the left side primarily.
And then just a banana on the right side.
Yeah, just a banana. Like
It's
monkey,
not even anymore.
Banana, not as heavy as monkey.
Another thing talked about in this chapter are the sparrows.
They died.
This guy found them in the snow. Didn't understand why they're dying. And then what happened was it was a bunch of types of selection working together because natural selection killed off all the ones that weren't fit to survive the cold. This was also stabilizing selection because it killed off all the larger and smaller ones, so all the original...
Perfectly balanced.
Yes. All the ones that were originally there, the medium-sized ones, they survived because they were best fit. So it was kind of reversing evolution back and keeping everything stable and in a line.
It was too cold. They didn't know what to do about it. I bet you monkeys could survive the cold much better than sparrows could. Anyways, moving on, another part of this chapter were the beetles. They had like a beak, like a finch kind of, but they used it to stab, kind of like a sword.
Exactly, and some beetles changed their feeding habits, and so one guy watched and saw that when they changed their feeding habits to different size fruit, their beaks got longer and shorter to be at the exact middle of the type of seed they were eating. It's like if they ate a seed with a larger diameter, then their beak would get larger. But if they started eating smaller fruits, their beak would actually get smaller. So they would be best fit for the one type of seed or fruit, whatever, that they're eating.
They did their lesson masters. They know their algebra. Moving on to chapter 17 now, this is where humans get introduced, and they seem to screw everything up like they always do in every single just piece of media ever. So it starts off where people are now starting to inhabit the Galapagos Islands, and they notice that the birds are kind of, like leeching off of the humans. There's this one woman, she was a librarian. She was basically feeding the birds rice So the birds soon realize, like, hey, it's free food. Why would I not go here?
And she's the source.
Yeah, she's the source. So what do? They keep going, and they go to her for everything. They go to her for medical problems, food problems, obviously.
And sometimes they even feel comfortable and fly into her house to grab the rice before she even puts it out.
She was the Finch bender, and also, moving on, there was another lady who were the birds, they were in her gardens, and she didn't like them, so she killed them and made soup, Finch soup, sopa de Finch.
Sopa.
And so I'm pretty sure the Grants did not appreciate her doing that.
For it is illegal.
Yeah, it's quite illegal. Also, the Finches were kind of, they saw the farms and were like, hey, yeah, it's more food. Yeah, and then they went and leached off some of those. Also, there was this big bird that came along.
Yeah, so what happened is there was this island that people dropped a bunch of prisoners off, and it became a prison colony. And along with them, they brought rats and cats and mules and pigs and
all non-finch inhabitants.
Yes. So what happened is there was this really big finch called the Magnestrosis magnestrosis.
The one from Sesame Street.
Which is kind of interesting because the regular large ground finch is just called the Magnestrosis.
That bird was big, but this one really big, like really big. Like Darwin even studied it back in his day.
And what happened is the mules and pigs started eating the cactuses that the magmags ate.
Monkeys are going crazy today.
They need food.
Yeah,
and the cats and rats were able to jump on the magmags because they were big and slow, so they went extinct. So there's an example of humans screwing up the ecosystem, introducing new species and making a species go extinct.
Anyway, speaking of Chapter 7, we have our ad break. This one is a game called Clash of Clans. Basically, you gotta build, fight, repair, and fight your way to victory. This event, called the Monkey Mash, is taking place in about a week here, and we have a special code called Monkey See, Monkey Do 64, and you will be able to get 16 free V-Bucks in this game mode. You're ready to build, fight, smash your way to victory. Thank you. Anyways, thank you to our sponsors, Clash of Clans, or as commonly known, Cock. Anyways, moving back to the podcast, we have Chapter 18. It talks about pesticides and global warming. Well, that's later, but anyways, onto the pesticides. This is like Rachel Carson era. This is where DDT, the pesticide, comes in. They start spraying it all over everything.
And they don't know the bad effects of it. They just think it's going to kill the bugs.
It's like, hey,
boom,
no
bam,
bugs in the thing. They don't
good.
eat our thing. Anyways. Basically, the DDT gets sprayed, and the bugs on the inside, well, most of them die. It does what it intended to do, but some of them survive and develop immunities, and they turn into super bugs.
Right, so the more they sprayed the chemicals, the more they got immune to it. So the chemicals started being ineffective, and then they had a real problem on their hands.
And they were like, hey, well, it's not working anymore. Why? It's because all of them evolved, and now they're immune.
And the same thing happened to viruses.
That's not a virus. That's my monkey. That's it.
Anyway, people started developing vaccines for viruses, right? And they thought, oh, that's no harm, no foul. Well, not vaccines, antibiotics. And so what happens is when they don't work, it creates a super bug.
Just like the DDT.
Because what happens is the ones that don't get killed create immunities. They make more with those same immunities, and they build those immunities, and then
now you got a bunch
everybody
of
on Earth dies, and then apocalypse.
And that's what happens. That's the only thing that happens.
Yeah,
that was the 1980s actually. All right, and moving on to Chapter 19. This talks about more the pollution side of things, like the Industrial Revolution and the introduction of smokestacks, all that fun stuff.
And also our effect on evolution and genetic engineering.
Yeah, all these smokestacks be pumping stuff into the air, which then gets spread all everywhere, affecting the creatures that live around the factories, like moths.
Yeah, the best example is the moths, because the trees during the Industrial Revolution in Europe started turning black because all the soot and ash that was being pumped into the air fell down outside the city. the trees started turning, the birch trees, the white ones, started turning black. So the moths
Like Michael Jackson.
that were naturally blended with the trees started to die off because the moths could easily see the white moths, or the birds could easily see the white moths against the black trees. So the darker ones survived until all the moth population was black. Then everybody started introducing pollution laws, and then the trees started going back to white and less pollution.
Yeah.
And then the moths started going back to lighter because the darker moths started dying against the light birch trees. So now it's all back to white moths.
Yeah, smoke really isn't good for anyone.
Yes, especially the white ones. The other thing that happens in the chapter
Was
is
God.
yes,
He invades. Actually, no, he doesn't.
generation of diversity engineers. So what that is
Basically, God.
people trying to play God by genetically engineering things.
Get it?
So
So like the acronym GOD, God.
Yup,
Pretty funny.
generation of diversity engineers.
Like, I get it.
As do I.
I also get it.
Me too.
You know, I get it too.
Anyway,
But the monkey gets it.
it talks about the ethics and process by which they genetically engineer things and if it's okay and not all that good stuff. So moving on to
Hey,
chapter 20.
Hey, kind of like the closure of the thing, but it doesn't
Exactly,
close it.
because it's the last chapter.
I get it.
Most do.
I
Others
also
may
get
not.
it. No, well, I get it.
Personally, I do.
No, I get it. I get it. I get
So it talks about humans
it.
mostly.
Yeah, global warming.
It starts off by talking about
Well, yeah.
humans' impact on
But
evolution
global warming is like
and give some examples because we, by our society, drives evolution of other creatures really fast because we evolve and change the world faster than anything else can evolve.
you know, we're the only ones who are supposedly self-aware. I mean, that's not proven, but you know, as they say,
But also, we drive the evolution of other creatures
We do.
a lot faster because we can move and do things that they can't with machines and tools and everything, and they have to try to keep up or die.
like with
and
past
they
examples
die.
of the smokestacks and the
Except
rice
moths.
feeding exhibition,
Exactly,
along with
yeah.
the Finch soup. Also, this brings up one of our other points. Mind is our beak, humans' beak. This is related because the finches, their beak is their toolbox, but humans, since we are self-aware and very smart, our mind is our beak, our toolbox. If we use our mind, we can do anything. If we don't use our mind, we're stupid and can't do anything at all, like a bird and their beak.
Right, and they use their beak for everything. We use our mind for everything we do.
Well,
And
some
that
of us.
brings us to the last thing of the tools we have naturally.
Like our mind, which is our
Yes.
beak.
Yep. So they give an example of finches on these islands that it's only one little island and there's no islands around it. So the one population of finches
Minecraft.
stays together
Is that why you did it?
and they can't become a new species. They can't like evolve too much because they're too close to each other. They can't spread out
they're in
and
their
change
own world.
niches. But once they are hatched and everything, they have to learn a trade on the island, kinda. Because there's
Extent.
many niches to
Some would
fill,
say.
many feeding habits, but only one type of beak. So they kind of try to get really good at feeding one type of way.
I'm doing like a motion here, signifying unison. You can't see it, but you know.
And that's kind of like humans in society. We are all born, we're not specified in anything, we aren't mastered anything, but we have to learn as we grow in our life. It's not like a generational evolution, it's us evolving in our lifetime, learning things. And everybody's born with the same tool set. Mostly.
Mostly. There's some exceptions there.
Right.
This has been the C47 podcast.
And that
we might.
concludes our
I might
Beak
be
of the
back.
Finch.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Beak of the Finch is over. It's done with. Yeah.
But the C47 podcast.
C47
lives on.
podcast. I might be. I might stick around a little. I don't know, but. Anyways, this has been the third and maybe final episode of Beak of the Finch, and we. I don't know. Have a good day. I don't know. I gotta go evolve
Feed the
my.
monkeys.
Yeah, I gotta go evolve my monkeys now.
And
Yeah.
yep, monkeys.
All right.
You know, just finished the podcast and
Nice.
I just been kicking ass lately. How about you? You been kissing ass? You been kissing or you been kicking?
Okay.
I've been kicking. You do the kissing.
Okay. You see, I can't.